Hi, and welcome to this tutorial for the all-new, written from the ground up, leaner, meaner, faster, and more compatible background renderer version 2.0. It now comes in two flavors, Basic and Pro. This tutorial will show you how to use both. First, let's learn how to install. We install background renderer in the Script UI Panels folder, which is inside of your Scripts folder, which is inside of the After Effects folder. So here it is, Scripts, and then inside of Scripts, Script UI Panels. On Windows, the Scripts folder is inside of the Support Files folder. Once you've installed it and you've launched After Effects, you run it from the Window menu. So here it is, Background Renderer. You now have to register it. So you enter your registration code here. If you are on CS5, you want to right click and paste. For now, we're just going to run it in trial mode. Trial mode unlocks both the basic and the pro version when you first run it. Once you register your basic version, you can also then have a trial period for the pro features. So there's lots of time to try the pro features. Now this little guy here is the help menu. So here you have full instructions as well as link to this video tutorial on how to use all of the features. So in its most basic format, you just basically use the background renderer button. And the way this works is you take your animation, you add it to the render queue. So I'm gonna go ahead and save it here in the as a QuickTime. And let's say, for example, that I, just for argument's sake, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. And say I had two comps. I'll go ahead and add both of these comps to my render queue. And, you know, you could have 50 things queued, whatever. And now once you've had it queued, you basically have them, you know, selected whatever settings you want. Instead of hitting this render button, you simply hit the background renderer button. So once you hit that, it basically says that it needs to save the project before launching the render. You hit yes, and then a terminal window opens. You will notice here that this terminal window is a nice shade of black with white text. I set that up myself by setting the preferences in the terminal. So as you can see here, background renderer is done. Have a nice day, and that's it. So like if we go now take a look in the Finder, you can see here that here are two movies that were rendered. And now the background renderer also does a log file. So if you go into your normal logs, these are your normal After Effects logs. And then background renderer keeps its own set of logs, which keeps track of everything that goes on in the terminal. Now, the reason this is really handy, this went so fast, but the one thing you didn't realize is once it was rendering, you were free to keep working in After Effects. It didn't actually tie up After Effects. So you can keep working and keep doing whatever you want. You can also quit After Effects if you wanted to work on something else. So it's very handy that way. Now let's get into the pro features. So the pro features are here in the advanced settings checkbox. So if I check this on, I can now set the priority of the render in the background. So if you plan on continuing on working in After Effects, you want to probably set the background priority render to low. Notice, by the way, how every time I hover over any of these features, there's a little pop-up that comes up and explains every feature. This is throughout the application. You can see little help tips everywhere. Background render priority. That basically determines how much CPU priority the background render gets. So if you're going to continue to work in the foreground, you want to set your background priority to low. As a matter of fact, unless you're just going to leave the machine to render, I would recommend you always leave this on low. But you can set this to medium, high, whatever you want. High is going to give it equal priority as the foreground application. And so, like I said, if you continue on working in the machine, I would recommend that you do not do that. Only set it to high if you plan on leaving the machine to render on its own. The max mem usage is how much memory of the available memory it's going to have to render in the background renderer. Now you would say, how can it be at more than 100%? Well, that's because it will use virtual memory. That means that if it runs out of the existing RAM on your machine, then it will add an additional 20% of that RAM in virtual memory. Now, that will make it render go very slow because once it starts using virtual memory, it starts writing stuff to disk, and that's very slow. However, it will give you your render a little extra memory so that it will actually render and not give you an error because it ran out of memory. Ever since CS5 was introduced, it addresses a 64-bit memory space, which has alleviated a lot of the memory problems traditionally associated with rendering in After Effects. So in CS5, you probably just want to leave these two settings to their defaults. The max RAM cache is how much of the memory is used for caching. Caching is when it renders something and then it keeps it in case it might need that part of the render that it already rendered again, so it doesn't have to render it again. So you want to have a little bit of RAM cache. Again, if you're running out of RAM memory and you're getting out of memory errors, you actually want to lower the RAM cache because it will actually not use the memory for caching and it will use the memory for actual rendering. Again, unless you have unless you're having memory problems, I would leave both of these to their defaults. Use multiprocessing is the equivalent of turning on multiprocessing in the foreground application, which will basically tell After Effects to use all the available processors in your machine to render. I highly recommend at least 2 gigabytes per processor plus 2 gigabytes for the system to have free for operation for you to use this feature. So unless you have a lot of RAM, I would recommend turning this off. Now we get to the new post-render actions. So notice here there's a configure button, but I can't click it until I actually turn this on. So once I turn on post-render actions, I can go into the configure menu. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this over here. And so now these are things that are going to happen after the rendering is over. So the most obvious is I can just have it play a sound. Now I can have it play the sound at the end of the render, in other words, once it's rendered both of these two items, or I can have it play the sound per comp. So once comp 1 is done rendering, and then once comp 2 is done rendering. So that's the difference between at end and per comp. You can also send an email. You can send the email per comp, at the end, or only if there's errors. This is a really handy feature. So for example, if I have it per comp errors only, if there's an error in one of these comps, it will send you an email immediately after that error is detected. If you do it at the end, once the entire render queue is done, if there was any errors, it will send you an email saying what the error was. So let's, for example, just set this here per comp. So if I turn this off, you can see here I enter my email address. Here I enter the subject of that email address. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it to some dummy, address here, dummy, or so we'll say yes, someone at email.com. And then in the subject, you can actually insert these special keywords. So you can see here our options are project name without the extension. These will come in more. These will make more sense once we get to the command. But for now, I would probably want to tell, like, if I'm going to say per comp, I would say my comp name. So I select comp name, and then I select the field where I want to insert the keyword, and I just hit insert keyword. So in this case, it would insert this word comp1. So it would say comp1, and then I can say is done rendering. That will be the subject of the email. Then I can attach the log, which will be the render log. And now I need to actually configure my email. So this is your basic email configuration settings. This is where your SMTP server is. This is the email address the email is going to be sent from. And then this is a little feature. The from name can actually insert the username and the computer name that you're rendering on, in case you're going to use the portable app feature that we'll get into a little bit later. That to render on multiple machines, you can have the actual machine name inserted when you get the email. Otherwise, you can just put your name there, or whoever you want the email to come from. Then, depending on your SMTP server, you'll want to turn on the secure socket, and most likely you're going to want to turn on server authentication, and this is your login and password for those features. This is a really cool feature. Here, this is send test email. So once you've entered all this information, click on send test email, and it will actually will attempt to send an email using these settings, so that you can actually make sure that feature is working before you actually use it on a render. The next feature is send SMS. Most mobile service providers have something called email to SMS gateway, which means that you can actually send an email to a special email address, and that'll forward that message to your phone. So when we turn this on, you're going to make sure you're going to have to also configure your email settings in order to use this feature. Don't worry, in case you try to use it, it will warn you. Now, here you enter your mobile number. Now, if I try to enter my mobile number now, it says please select a provider first. That means that it actually is the script attempts to do a little bit of error checking to make sure that you're actually entering your phone number properly. So for example, here in New York, I use AT&T. And so I'm just going to go ahead and select this here, AT&T Wireless. Now, if your service provider is not in this list, please send us an email and we will add them to the list. So now once I've done that, for example, the country code of the United States starts with 1. So if I start typing my phone number with the area country code, that's a bad thing. I want to just actually write just the phone number. And in America, it's 10 digits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 10 digits total. So the area code would be 3 digits, and then the rest of the numbers would be like this. So this is 10 digits, which is the right amount of digits. So if I hit on SMS help, I'm going to basically get this little help thing here that says it explains how it works, and so it shows you what the email that it's going to send is here. So if you're having trouble with this feature, just check with your service provider to make sure that this is formatted correctly. You can then download, if we update this list, you can always check for an updated list. And then you can also send a test SMS from here so that you can actually see if your settings, the way you enter them, are correct. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and get an SMS. So again, for example, one thing you could do is have an email per comp, but you could actually have an SMS if there's errors, right? So because you want to be alerted in case there's errors. Now, if you want to, again, you can just have this at the end. It depends. You can have any of these settings any way you want. Now, you can also get an iPhone alert. And the way the iPhone alert works is it works in conjunction with the iPhone app called Prowl. Prowl is $3 in the App Store, and it's very cool. Once you buy and download Prowl, you go to your settings page. Let's go ahead and do that. So once you have your Prowl application, you're going to want to go ahead and register here. You go to register and you just pick a username and password, and once you have that, you go ahead and log in. And when you log in, you go to the settings tab, and there's going to be your API key. So you just basically hit copy here, and then we go back to After Effects. And then again, in CS5, the way you paste is you right click and hit paste. On CS4, on Mac, you do edit and paste. And on Windows, I think you can just do Control V. But again, I think in CS5, even on Windows, you have to right click to paste. Don't ask me why it's different in every version, but that's how it is. Once you've entered your API key, then you can hit Verify API key, and you can see here that it actually returned success, that it actually has validated the API key properly. That means that it's working, and that means that it can talk to the Prowl server. So it'll be able to give me an iPhone alert once the render is done. You can set the priority for this Prowl alert, which if you read the instructions for Prowl, you can see how that can be very handy. For example, you can not only be disturbed if it's an emergency, for example. So you could set it to emergency on per comp errors only, and you will only get, depending on how you have your Prowl set up, you'll get a push notification if it's an emergency because you got an error on your render. Now, for growl alerts, notice how it's actually turned off because I don't have growl notify installed. So let's go ahead and see what that's all about. So if I hit on this button, it basically says it's this very cool way of getting notifications. So it's going to basically tell me to download the installer, la la la. So then it says, do I want to go there now? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So here you go to growl, and you want to go ahead and download by clicking here. And once we've downloaded it, then you just open the installer. And on Windows, it's very similar, but on Mac, the reason I wanted to show this on Mac is because, first of all, let's go ahead and install. So we double click and just go ahead and install here. And once it's installed, you're going to get this little growl system preference panel. You want to make sure that you start growl at login. That's very important, because if this growl is not running, then your growl, you won't be able to get your growl notifications. Now, this is very important for Mac. Once you've installed growl, you need to go into the extras folder, which is this little folder here, and you want to install growl notify, which is this extra installer that you need to do. So once I've installed growl, I'm going to go ahead and install growl notify as well. And that's it. Once it's installed successfully, then I am all ready to go. So we can go back to After Effects, and what's really cool is you don't even need to restart After Effects. All I have to do is restart the script. Let's do a trial. And so now you will see that growl is activated. All I needed to do was restart. So that's pretty cool. So now that growl is installed, I can turn on growl. Again, same options. I can make the same sort of priority for growl, but I can also make it sticky, which means that the notification will stay until I've acknowledged it, or turn it off. And then command. This is a very sort of advanced feature, I guess, but what it allows you to do is issue a command line, a terminal command line command. So, for example, I could say, copy the, and then I'll take the file. So I would do output file path and insert keyword. And then that's the path without the file name. So then I'll go ahead and add the file name with the extension, because you can add it without the extension and then the extension separately in case that's what you need. So I'll just insert the output file name. And then what you want to do is you want to escape keywords in command line, because unless you add, you could do this, you could add quotations like this, but in Mac, in Unix, you can also do this, which is escape. So if you're not going to put quotes, just escape. Let's say I wanted to do that. I wanted to copy it, say, to the desktop. So for example, what this would do is I would do this after each comp. It would copy this rendered file to the desktop. You wouldn't necessarily need to do that, but it's just an example. If you hit save, so you can add a little short note. So I'll say copy render to desktop and hit OK. So you can see it has it saved there for me. So it tells the note here is in parentheses, and then the actual command is here on the right. So if I select it, it's going to insert it. But I'm going to go ahead and delete this real quick, because if you look, the example here is an ffmpeg command, which is probably what most people, I think, are going to use this for, which is essentially you could actually use ffmpeg, which is a command line compression tool to compress, say, an image sequence into a H.264 QuickTime movie or something that you could use to screen or something like that. Alright, so now we'll just have this command, which is going to copy it to the desktop, and wait for command to finish means that if in case like you're actually compressing the movie or something, it will actually wait for the compression to finish before it goes on to the next item. But if you turn this off, then as soon as this render is done, two parallel processes will start. One is it'll start compressing or copying it to the desktop or whatever, and it'll immediately start rendering the second item in your render queue. Message is what the notification message will be. So if you're getting an email, this will be the body of the email. If you're getting an iPhone push notification, this is going to be the actual content of the push notification. And again, here you can use these special keywords. So if you wanted to know anything specific to that render queue item, you can insert it as a special keyword. Or you can just write yourself a sweet little note, whatever pleases you. And then lastly, we just have a sleep machine or shutdown machine, which means that after the entire render queue is done, you can either put the machine to sleep or shut the machine down. So those are the settings here. So we'll put this on normal. So we're going to go ahead and, at the end, we're going to get an iPhone alert, and then the growl alert will happen per comp. and then the command will also happen per comp. So we'll go ahead and hit save these settings, and we'll go ahead and turn these renders, and we'll go ahead and try this render now. So basically you need to save before rendering. Hit OK. So this is our prior render. So you can see the render's done. Here's my growl notify, and my growl notification. You heard the render sound, then it says sending prowl notification, and then sending your prowl notification to this visit. I don't know if you guys just heard that, but that was my iPhone getting the prowl notification that said comp 1 and comp 2 of BG renderer demo.aep is finished rendering. And then it also issued this terminal command, which means that it copied this file to the desktop. So let's go ahead and look at the Finder. You can see here that the two items are rendered, but now let's also look at the desktop, so you can see that it actually copied the movies to the desktop. So that was successfully done as well. Now we only have two features left. This is the save background launcher file. What this does is basically you can save it in the same as a project file, or you can choose any location you want. We'll leave it as save as project file, and we'll just check this here. We'll go ahead and turn off the render actions for now. What this does is it actually now it asks you if you want to launch the render right away, because what this does is it saves this little thing. So I'm going to hit say no. So it can say that you can launch the render by double clicking on this file, which is essentially in the same folder as my project. So it says, do I want to open that window now? I'm going to say yes. So here it is. So now here's this new file. This is this BG renderer command file. Well, what this does, and I can actually, move this within the machine anywhere I want. I can just double click on this, and as you can see here, double clicking in that launched the render. So there it is rendering, which is great. Now, I said moving around in your machine. If you plan on moving this to another machine, for example, if you're on a network and you want to use several machines to render the same project, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and set this to multi-machine settings for both of the render settings and output module. You want to set them to multi-machine settings, and then what you want to do is you want to say make portable app. And this is slightly different than just this because, and we'll go ahead and hit render now. So we can hit and save it, and then the first time you run this, by the way, it's going to tell you that it's going to take 15 seconds to create the very first app. So it takes about, there it just finished. It takes about 15-20 seconds to do it, and that's only the first time you run it. After the first time you run it, then it's instant. So do I want to launch the render now? I'm going to say no, but I'm going to say yes, open this Finder window for me. So now you can see I have two different items. One is this command file, which we got when we did the save background render file. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that away. Let's look at these as icons. So you can see now this is the background render app. Now on Mac, it creates this cool little one icon. You just copy this around, and that's it. So you copy this to another machine on your network, and you just double click on it to launch the render. As you can see here, it just launched the render. The difference between this one and the command line there, as you can see, it started rendering the sequence. Background renderer requires some special files in order to work, and those files are hidden inside of this little file. On Windows, it's going to be a folder that you're going to move around, which is essentially the same thing, but you can see that you can then move that around, and as you can see here, it's continuing to render. So this is the file that you would want to use to move to another machine, which basically allows you to create a little ad hoc rendering network. By just copying this file around to a lot of machines and just double clicking on them, you can basically have them all render simultaneously to the same network. You're going to want to make sure that all the same footage files, plugins, etc. are all available on all the machines. But I'm assuming that would be a pretty obvious thing for you to figure out. And that's it. Those are all the features. There is one more feature that I will show you in 1 second, which only is available when you're running at CS3 or CS4. Okay, so here I am in CS4 now. And as you can see now, in CS4, there's one extra option here at the bottom that says you use CS5 render engine. I made this feature because I had requests for people who, especially freelancers, who've already upgraded to start working in CS5, but due to having to work with clients and whatnot and keep compatibility, are still working in either CS3 or CS4. However, because CS5 uses the new 64-bit memory, you don't have any more of those out-of-memory errors. So with this feature, you can work in CS4 and send your renders to CS5. In order for this feature to be available, you need to have CS5 installed on the same machine that CS4 is installed. So if you have CS5 installed, this feature will automatically show up. And when you select it and you hit render, it will use the render engine from CS5 to render your CS4 project. It will do the conversion for you on the fly. So I hope this is a convenient feature for people who are still working in CS3 or CS4, but want to have the convenience and added memory benefits and speed of the CS5 rendering engine. So that's it for this in-depth tutorial of the new BG Renderer 2.0 with new pro features. Hope you guys enjoy it.